So today I want to go over a grenade-focused Rafa build that just makes the entirety of the endgame of Borderlands 4 a complete cakewalk, whether it be bosses, whether it be in AoE situations. This build allows you to do all of that endgame content on the highest difficulty without ever shooting a single bullet out of any gun. Now this is going to be a red tree main build, so we are going to be using Peacebreaker cannons, which are just cannons that pop out of your shoulders and deal damage. The augment we're using also causes our Peacebreaker cannons to now scale their damage off of ordnance damage as well, so they'll be doing a lot more damage, and we just get increased ordnance damage when they're out. And you can also reactivate your action skill, take your cannons off your shoulders, throw them on the ground, and they will also have a chance when they're on the ground to throw out grenades that are just copies of your grenades. And the capstone we're using just turns our Peacebreaker cannons into shotguns that can also ricochet their pellets around. That'll just deal a lot more damage. But then going into our passives, we have increases to gun damage. Now increases to gun damage will also increase our ordnance damage because of one of our specializations. Then we're going into whenever we crit, we restore some of the duration of our action skill on a 4-second cooldown. We have a lot of crit on our grenades, and our Peacebreaker cannons will just crit all the time anyway. We're putting 1 point into Sia, which is just a kill skill. Whenever you kill something, you restore a percent of your max shield. This will just help our survivability a lot, and even 1 point into this is a lot of shielding for most content. Then 3 points into increased damage based upon our shield, and if our shields are at max, this doubles this, so really big damage increase. Then whenever our shields break after being fully charged, we spawn a free grenade that's based upon our extra grenade, so just throwing out more grenades. We have 5 points into increasing the damage of our indirect projectiles, which is our action skill damage, which is our grenades. So pretty much just all the damage we are dealing will be increased off of this. We have 4 points into dealing bonus incendiary damage from our indirect projectiles, and if they're already dealing incendiary damage, it doubles this. Then we have 1 point into indirect projectiles gaining lifesteal, which should be enough lifesteal, pretty much all we're going to need. And we're not putting more points into the bonus incendiary damage because 4 points will just allow us to get our capstone. Then 4 points into confetti, so our ordnances deal bonus damage based upon our current weapons element, so this is just a bunch of bonus damage. You can also deal a lot more damage if you're matching the element to what health type you're currently damaging, so make sure you're using some melee one weapons to be able to freely change the elements you're using. Then going into the green tree, we're taking 5 points into gun damage. This is just to get lower into the tree. 5 points into increased movement speed while we have overdrive active, which is just going to be massive and really good for general gameplay. Then 5 points into hard shell. Whenever our shield breaks, we instantly restore a portion of our max shield as overshield, and this can't be reactivated until we use our action skill again, but this will just help us survive a lot more. Then finally 5 points into increased splash damage, and our splash damage gains increased critical strike chance. So with this, we will now have 3 different things increasing the critical strike chance of our grenades depending on what grenade you're using. So we'll actually have a pretty high chance for our grenades to crit, which will massively increase the damage. And that brings us into our specializations. Once you get a lot of points, there are a bunch of different areas you can go into to min-max this more. But the main thing you want to go into when you don't have a lot of points is you want to get 10 into Brute, 10 into Survivor, to get into Gadgeteer, to put 20 into that. So you can get Full Spectrum Arsenal, which your ordnance damage now benefits from increases to gun damage. So basically half of your gun damage increases gives you increases to ordnance damage. And then Fragmentation Payload, your ordnances now have a chance to critically hit, and they deal increased critical strike damage. So again, that's why we're stacking up our critical strike chance, because we just get massive critical strike damage increases. And also going into Gadgeteer reduces our ordnance cooldown. Now once you start to get more points, you can put 10 into Sharpshooter, 10 into Runner, 1 into Daredevil, which will give us now with Caffeine, whenever we use our rep kit, our action skill cooldown is reduced. We're going to be using our rep kit a lot, so this will just allow us to have our action skill out a lot more. Then when you have enough points to put 20 into Survivor, you can get the best defense. You gain increased damage. This is just damage with everything based upon the fullness of your shield or health, whichever has a higher max capacity, 30% at max, so just another big damage increase. And then that brings us into our gear. Now probably the most important thing outside of our grenade is our class mod, which is the Grenazerker. Whenever you throw a grenade or T-tier gun, you throw an additional, so pretty much anything that can spawn a grenade, us throwing it, our action skill using it, getting other random grenade procs, will all throw 2 grenades. So that's absolutely massive. You're just just doubling all of your grenades. And you can also get a massive increase to our bonus damage from our weapons element as a roll on this, which will just be incredibly strong. But then for our grenades, what I'm generally using for most of the content are swarm grenades. They basically just keep multiplying into a bunch of additional grenades. You can also get the crit roll on this, which grenades have a 25% chance to deal critical damage. So that's just 25% increased crit chance. And then through other things, we'll have another 15%. So we actually have a good chance to crit. And these will just track everything. They're very good for pretty much everything in the game except vault bosses. A lot of order grenades can kind of break on the vault bosses. They have a bit of an issue with tracking, but there are a few other grenade options we can also use. You can use the Chamurki, which isn't as good for AoE damage. It's much better for single target bosses because this will just constantly regenerate itself when it's hitting a target. So on a boss, you can just keep throwing these and you'll just have a bunch of these going to constantly regenerate themselves. And then if you want to use the incredibly strong interaction, you can use a fire pot grenade, which just throws out torque stickies as it bounces around. And these torque stickies work exactly like they do on weapons. So what you can do, you can use a fire pot and you can use a weapon with the torque sticky gyro jet roll on it, which will increase your explosive damage to the target depending on how many stickies are on it. So what you can do, throw out a bunch of fire pots, all the stickies from the fire pots stick into a target, then you just proc the effect of the torque sticky gyro jets while using the fire pot, and the fire pot stickies will get the increased damage from whatever the roll is on your weapon. So this weapon I have increases it by 13% for each sticky, and because fire pot is a ordnance and gets so much damage scaling based upon all of our ordnance scaling, every sticky from our fire pot can do like upwards of 100,000 damage, even if it's just one sticky on the target. So you can just insta-kill bosses with this interaction of fire pot and a weapon with the sticky gyro jet roll on it. So you can just insta-kill any boss in the game using that interaction if that's something you want to use as well. That's more specifically for bosses because once there's a bunch of other targets around, the stickies will just randomly fly off to other targets as well. And outside of that, you're not using any weapons with this build. I mean, you can use weapons if you want to make it faster. I'm using a full grenade build. I only want to be throwing grenades. The main thing you want to be doing is if you want to use the fire pot, make sure you have a weapon with that specific torque roll on it. Then you want to make sure you have weapons, specifically Maliwan, with different elements on them. So you could switch elements very quickly because we do a bunch of additional damage based upon our weapons elements. So make sure you have some Maliwans equipped as well. But then for our other gear, you rep kit, the main roll you want is Go-Go Gadget. On use, increase your ordnance cooldown rate by 50% for 6 seconds. This is incredibly strong. I also have Enrage on this to increase our damage. It might end up being better to just get a rep kit with a lower cooldown so you can just use Go-Go Gadget more. The Enrage with the increased damage is also really nice. We also want to use our rep kit more to reduce the cooldown of our action skill as well. Then for our shield, I'm just using Firework, which is on kill. It spawns missiles that track targets and deal damage to them. It also has a roll on Armor Break. You spawn a bunch of additional missiles that do a bit less damage than the legendary roll on this, but it's really cool because you're just throwing out grenades and spawning a bunch of missiles on kill. And because we're also using Get Throwing, where the third roll of this, anytime you throw a grenade is a chance to spawn another missile. So while we're throwing out grenades, we just have these missiles going everywhere, tracking targets as well. So it's a really cool addition to the build. You can use whatever shield you want. You can use a much tankier shield if you want as well. For your enhancement mod, it really doesn't matter. It doesn't seem much things really affect your grenade damage specifically from your enhancement mods, so just use whatever you really want there. And then for our firmware, we're using 3 of Get Throwing, increase your ordnance damage, increase your splash radius, and again, anytime we throw grenades, they can also throw out these random missiles. Then 2 into Gadget Ahoy, our ordnance cooldown is reduced and our ordnance damage is increased. But that is the entirety of this build, and this build is just so incredibly strong, like a lot of other Rafa grenade builds are, especially if you're using order grenades or any grenades that track. You legitimately shoot no bullets. You just get to run around and spam out as many grenades as you possibly can, and they're going to track targets and just kill everything. If you want to kill, say, a vault boss much more quickly, you can use the Fire Pot Torg weapon roll interaction to insta-kill any vault bosses. Any other bosses in the game have a lot less health, so you can legitimately just use Swarm on those and you're still going to kill them incredibly quickly. This grenade build specifically has ways to regenerate shields, has a bunch of other increases to your survival, and will just give you pretty good movement speed increases as well. So this is just a much more balanced build while still dealing absurd damage. But that's all I want to go over, so thanks for watching.